An art journal tutorial with Creative Katie. Live with catitude. This page I use the Mixed Media Technique Tag number 4 technique to reverse the stencil. Don't forget to subscribe by hitting the icon in the lower right hand corner. Here's a sneak peek of the page. Check the description box for links to all the products used in the creation of this page.
I was flipping through my stencils, looking for inspiration. What struck me? What do I want to use? And I came across this stencil. It was a cut file that I bought for my Silhouette Cameo. And I absolutely love this, and it works really well with jelly prints, but I haven't used it on a page. So I thought, okay. Instantly, what I saw here was, I like this open spart, and I could see this as being colored, and then this part being black, kind of like a fence, kind of like a trellis. I could see that, and I could see butterflies kind of attached on there. But the problem is if I colored the page, did colors, and stenciled through the stencil, these, what you see as white now, would be black, and the lines would be colored. And that's okay, but I really wanted the lines to be black. So I kind of got busy doing a different page, and then it hit me. If I use the technique of using white gesso on top of a black background and then putting color on it, I will get those colors. So I very quickly painted my background black, and I'm going to put the stencil on here, and I am going to paint through the stencil with my white gesso. Now, in order to make this stick, what I'm going to use is some spray adhesive. Now, this is Elmer's Craft Bond, but it says if you want it to be temporary, spray a light coat and allow to dry for 3 to 5 minutes before joining. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a box, put that in there, and I'm going to put a light coat of the Elmer spray and wait a couple minutes, 3 to 5 they suggest, and then adhere it on, and then I will be back to put on the white gesso. So it's about 3 to 5 minutes. Now if I want that black, make that. Just going to line that up and just press that down just a smidge, and you can see it's going to come up, but it is going to hold this stencil down a little bit more for me than it would otherwise. Now I'm trying to decide what the best way of applying the gesso would be. Do I want to apply it with a brush or a sponge? So I'm going to do it maybe a brush. Oops. Now, worst case scenario again, if their paint drips underneath it or something happens, I can always paint it with another coat of black gesso. I like it with the sponge because you're getting some texture inadvertently. But as usual with stamping, it's just going to take a little time. I want to get fairly close to the edges because I want to get crisp edges. So if we kind of peel that back, oh, we got run-in. Okay. And that's when I use the brush. So I think I'm just going to stick to this. This works better. I can adjust that.
So I found that the best way of doing this for the large areas is to do a combination of applying it with the brush, you know, putting it in the bigger areas, and then using the sponge to get it closer to the edges so it doesn't go under. And this part is sped up 4 times, but I wanted you to see that it does take some time to get this done. And I think it's a wonderful technique, and this will allow you to reverse every stencil you own, but it is going to be a bit finicky to get this done. So here I am just adding more white gesso because I want some really bright colors. So I want it to be more on the white side than on the gray side. And all this while I'm thinking about how I'm going to deal with the seepage that I did have. So I pull it off and reveal. So to deal with the seepage, I'm just getting a bit of the Liquitex Basics paint, and I put it on my craft mat, and I just thin it down a little bit, and I'm applying it with my round brush. In a minute you're going to see me zoom in here. If you take the brush, push it there, and push it flat, it pushes the paint to the edges, and you get a fairly clean edge. So that's kind of what I'm doing. Again, it's a bit of a finicky job, but so worth it, because now you have the ability to reverse every single one of your stencils. And I can't tell you how excited I am about that.
So it's all dry, and it's not exactly perfect. The edges are still a little bit hazy, and I'm okay with that, you know, give or take. And I decided that I'm going to, instead of use butterflies, which I envisioned here first, I'm going to use my crazy cats, because why not? They seem to fit here relatively well. So I've been playing around with the placement of them. I want to put a word or phrase kind of in the middle, and the cats around here. So I'm going to get my phone out, and I'm just going to take a picture of the arrangement, just so when I take them off to stamp onto paper. Now,
so I'm unsure about what color I'm going to paint over the white gessoed areas. So since I'm undecided, one thing that I tend to do is do the part that I know. So I am simply going to progress with stamping out the cats using my StazOn ink. And I typically stamp, when I start stamping, I stamp out a couple times to get a really good stamp. What I don't use, I end up putting in my stash and keeping that for when I'm traveling or doing a create date. Then I can just grab certain things in the stash that are already partially done. And that saves time if I want to do some creating. That's also a hint for people who don't have a solid hour to sit there and do a page. Do it in pieces. Do some stamping, have that at the ready. Do some backgrounds, have that at the ready. Then you can just assemble them on a third time. So you just kind of break up your creation time into doable parts that work with your schedule. The paper that I'm stamping on is a little bit thicker than copy paper. It takes moisture better and it doesn't pill like I find that copy paper does. And at this point, I'm not sure how I'm going to color these cats, which medium. I was thinking of using my mermaid markers, and I end up deciding not to because I found that it really pilled more. Now I'm putting the cats on here because I don't want to duplicate colors. I do a lot to preserve where I'm putting the cats, and I still manage to get it all mixed up. So as you see here, I have chosen to use my Neocolor 2s to color these cats. And I chose that because the Neocolor 2s are really highly pigmented. They go on so smooth and creamy, and they're just really easy to work with. I could have used my Inktense pencils. I could have used acrylic paint if I had wanted. You know, the options are endless. This is what I chose at this time. I had the colors that I needed. Now, I fast forwarded this part because how I'm coloring is really, really, really basic. There's no specific technique here. I try to get some shading in by applying darker colors. I try to thin the paint in some areas and have it thicker in others so it looks darker. But really, you know, nothing fancy about my coloring. There are people who do an exemplary job of that are far better to watch than I. Sorry for being off screen. I thought I cut that part out. There we go. So there I'm adding a little darker colors, and then I'm just blending them. Now I found that the Neocolor 2s, if you let them dry for a day or so, it's very easy to write on with the micron pens adding detail. Doing it right after the fact didn't seem to work, but a couple days later when I just wanted to add a couple little details, I found that it could go on and it didn't cause any problems. So just pass along that little bit of knowledge. And as you see, I'm scribbling right over the line because I don't care. I know I'm going to be cutting all of these kitty cats out. And there are all the cats. So after a brief attempt of trying to cut these out with my scissors, I decided that it's got to be easier with an X-Acto knife, and it totally was. I have a cutting mat underneath. I'm holding down the paper so I don't rip it, and my blade is sharp. And so I just proceed and cut out all the cats in this way. Far, far, far easier. I am not a fussy cutter. I don't like all that piddly little cutting. I don't know, maybe it's the teacher in me that spent hours and hours cutting things for kindergarten and grade 1 students. I don't know. But right now, this is an awesome way of doing it, and I got it done far quicker and better than if I was using my scissors. But use what works for you, what you feel more comfortable with. You can buy some dies now that you can use to cut out these. It's not something that I want to spend my money on, but that is available to you. And if you were doing a lot of cards and you were using them a lot, that would be very worthwhile. So there are the cats that are cut out, and with all the white edges, I'm just taking a bit of the base color of the cats with the Neo Color 2s and activating it with water and just painting the edges to get rid of the white. You can do this with an ink pad, but I prefer using paint. It's far quicker and more simple for me. So there are the cats, and now the moment of truth has come, and I have to decide what I'm going to do to add color to this. And I'm thinking that I'm going to take the stencil and respray it and stick it down and apply color into the squares. And based on the colors of the cats, I now know that I'm going to go in the blue-green category. And I'm just wondering if I want to add even more visible texture using some stencils. So I'm just kind of thinking about where I want to go. So back in the box and a quick spray. You should spray this outside, but I didn't. And I decided to use my Dilutions paints because applying them on the blending tool, there's very little moisture, and I figure there's less likelihood of me getting seepage. So there I have my colors, and I'm just using the blending tool, and you've seen me do this in numerous videos. I love the Dilutions paints for the ease that they go on with these blending tools, with the felt applicators. And I'll put a link to all the products that I use to create this page, including the stamps and the stencils, as well as the Dilution paints and the applicators, in the description box below. And that'll take you to my Amazon store. Full disclosure, when you buy stuff, when you go through to my Amazon store through the link, I do get a small commission, but it does not change the price that you pay. Please, 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 always check the price. I try to pick the best deal when I select it, but over time, I think that can change. So, you know, do due diligence for yourself and check out the other options in buying. Some of them are with free shipping, some of them are cheaper. So, you know, make sure you're getting the best deal for yourself. And thank you very much. If you go through my Amazon store, which then gives me a small commission, you know, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. So I'm just adding the colors there. And as usual with the Dilutions paints, you put on the first coat, it goes through this ugly stage. Then you continue to add more layers. Because they are translucent and transparent paints, you can build up the colors really well. And as you can see, I've used an analogous color scheme here, the greens and blues. These colors are next to each other on the color wheel, and I know that when I'm blending them wet on wet, that they're not going to make mud. So using the same colors and one stencil, I am just stenciling using the Dilutions paints. And I'm using the lighter colors and the darker colors all over the place. And I'm using the same stencil. Now, some people like to put lots of different stencils, and you can definitely do that. I like using one or two that are similar, and I find that that makes for a more cohesive page. I just wanted to add a little bit more interest to my color blocks here. You see I taped it down across the bottom. That I want a black edge there, and I didn't want to have to repaint it black. So there's little things you can do to help yourself. So I'm really enjoying and liking how this is turning out. It's kind of going with the picture that I had in my brain of the final product. I just wasn't sure exactly how I was going to get there. So we have the great unveiling here. I'm just taking off the tape and just peeling this back. And there's no residue from this spray adhesive. And I love, love, love it. Oh, it's so great. I'm so thrilled that this worked.
So there we have it. I am absolutely loving it. I love how using that technique works so well. You know, if I do it more often, I guess I'll get better.
So I put the cats where I want them, and I have the idea, and I've seen this done, where they stamp the cats. I kind of want the whiskers to show. Really, this step was really unnecessary. There was no bang for my buck in time doing this. I could have just as easily have skipped this step and, you know, just drawn in the whiskers. So I really sped this up, but I'm stamping it, and it does kind of give a little bit of an outline, but it did mean that when I went to glue it down, I had to be a little more careful and make sure every bit and piece lined up. So if this was on a different application, it may be more necessary. On here, it really didn't end up being necessary. And if you caught it, yes, I ended up with 2 yellow cats together, despite all my attempts at making sure I didn't do that. So I kind of giggled to myself shortly after. So I grabbed my gel medium and I'm putting it right onto my background because I know that nothing there is going to be activated by the gel medium. And I'm putting a coat on top of the cats as well to seal it in. And I like that because I know I'm going to be shading the cats, and that just helps to seal the paper so that it doesn't absorb the water when I go around with the Stabilo all pencil. And I use the matte formulation because I don't want that shine. If you use something that is shiny satin or gloss medium, you're going to get that shine where you put it, and you're going to end up having to put the medium across the whole page so it looks all the same. So you don't end up with little streaks of shiny parts here and there. So I cut out the quote, "Live with Catitude," on my printer with the same paper that I cut out, used for the cats. And I just centered it in there. And I like the little pop of white. It kind of goes with the white of the cat's eyes. And here I'm just using my Stabilo all pencil and outlining each of the cats and then just dancing out with a wet brush the color. So it looks like the cats have some shadow and shading around them. I'm going to put a link to my mixed media technique tag where I show different ways of getting the shading effect, including floating your acrylic paint, which is then permanent. This is a little step, but it always makes a huge difference to the end result. So just keep turning the page, adding water, and dancing the Stabilo out, the color out, so to create that shading. So now we have some close-ups of the finished page and these cats. I did add some line work with my Micron pen a couple days later, and I found it was really easy to write on top of the Neocolor 2, so it must have cured in that time, and was fairly easy. There was also matte medium on top of that, and that probably completely dried, allowing me to add the line work and, you know, even make these cats pop out even more. So this is a bit of a different page, using the technique of using white gesso to keep your colors bright, and this allowed us to reverse the stencil, which is something which I think is really going to come in handy for other pages, because quite often I want the stencil to be reversed, and now I have a way of doing it. I hope you enjoyed this. Give me a thumbs up and leave a comment. Bye for now.